Hi, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Linda, and I work in marketing here at Litium. And this webinar is one in a series that we are doing to inspire and give some tricks to companies within digital commerce. And today we will talk about digital commerce in B2B. And we will talk about some trends in B2B commerce and look at the maturity ladder and describe the different steps, and most importantly, discuss and give advice on how you can move up the ladder towards a more mature digital commerce. And with us today to talk about this, we have our experts, Dan Andersson and Joachim Löv, from one of our solution partners, Columbus. But before we start, some practicalities. I will soon hand over to Dan and Joachim to take you through the presentation, and that will take about 30 minutes. And in the end, we have time for some questions. So if you have questions, please write them under question in the control panel, and we will answer them in the end. After the webinar, I will send out the recording and the presentation. So if you miss something or want to share it with someone else, you can do that. So with that said, I hand over to you, Dan and Joachim.
Thank you, Linda. So I'm Dan Andersson, working for Columbus, and beside me I have my colleague.
Good morning, I'm Joachim Löv, also working for Columbus as a senior advisor within e-commerce and specialized in business to business.
And today we will focus on the presentation, so we will close down the video here in just a second. Just wait a minute. There it goes. So today we all live in a constant change. As B2B companies, you are facing a lot of challenges, but those challenges can also be seen as huge opportunities. And that is what this webinar is about, an opportunity. Take the next step and reach the summit. So what's going on? First of all, the customers is changing. We have gone through a huge demographic change lately. Customers are today ready to engage with us anytime, anywhere, and requires a personalized and seamless experience. Their expectations are increasing. Need of convenience, ease of use, frictionless and non-breaking customer journeys. Customers has become more demanding, and their geographic markets has changed from nearby to global, and old local behaviors are replaced by new global behaviors. Customers' B2C expectations are also influencing their B2B behavior. They seek self-service models, transparency, reduced complexity, and cohesive experiences.
We also see that industry itself is changing. There are larger changes taking place, like the fourth industrial revolution has been ongoing now for many years, with digitalization as a main driver. We also see minor changes, but still important ones, like online configuration and sales of complex products now being commonplace. But foremost, we see that organizations are themselves going through a change. It can be anything from a displacement of various types of competencies and skill sets through the dissolvement and creation of new functions. But foremost, a very big and substantial change to the way that we go through sales and marketing. We also see that we compete and collaborate in a different way than before. Increased speed has become something very important, both for competition and how we arrange our own company. We see now that competitors are changing and offering new services much more frequently than they did before. We also see that ourselves, and looking into our own organizations, that we run fewer and fewer lengthy projects in benefit of making smaller and faster changes. We also collaborate now with distributors and resellers in a different way. We share product information more frequently, analytics, we run campaigns together in product launches, and we do business over third-party channels, and so on.
Our offer changes from product to services. We see new business models and disruption. We are cutting out the middlemen, selling directly to consumer, using marketplaces to grow, And we are seeing an increase in sharing economy, and we are doing business everywhere.
And better technological conditions are available to us, more powerful and more easy to set up. Cloud computing and cloud hosting is now a given thing. You can be everywhere at a lower cost and much faster with easy integrations. Composable IT architecture has also been and starting to become a very real thing. And this all allows for much more personalization, marketing automation, predictive selling, and data-driven and continuous development, and much more. Alongside these technological changes, we also see a form of data explosion. It's very easy today, and very quickly you can set up the collection and usage of a large array of different types of data, but about both usage and business. And the challenge is still, though, how to use that data in a valuable way. Digitalization is, well, basically everywhere these days.
We have also over years seen a change in the buying process. There was a time when buyers contacted us early and asked for information, and that time no longer exists. Today, customers seek information when they have it, when they are ready for purchase. They may contact a salesperson. That's why it's important to ensure that you have a more market-driven sales process today. And Gartner predicts by 2025, 80% of interactions between vendors and buyers will take place in B2B digital channels. And Gartner also predicts by 2025, 60% will have transformed their sales into a data-driven sales process, where sales process, systems, data, and analytics are integrated.
If we look at the B2B decision makers, if we start at the top right, you can see that 73% of them are millennials, and 1/3 of them are the sole purchase decision makers at their companies. If they could decide for themselves, about 87% would like to see a self-serve buying journey. And for less expensive items, like it can be consumables, spare parts, and accessories, the B2B buyers expect an entire self-serving personalized journey. The majority also are willing to buy big ticket items to a value of $50,000 or more.
Due to the pandemic, we also have seen a rise in remote sales activities. During 2020, it was up to 94%. Last year, it went back a little, but the expectations is that it will remain on this level, meaning there's a huge need to really reduce silos in sales and marketing and really incorporate your digital channels as another primary sales channel, if it isn't today. So the question is, where are you on the digital transformation journey?
So knowing one's digital maturity is of interest for a couple of reasons. First of all, we need to know where we are at in order to know where to go next. It tells us something about what the next common step would be. It also shows us the extent to which we live up to external expectations and the extent we utilize available capabilities. This in turn provides input on how we should prioritize our resources and investments. Taking a look now at Litium's analysis of more than 500 Scandinavian B2B companies, we get the following division of maturity. You can see these percentages at each of these different steps. And this includes then companies offering, it could be simple digital product catalogs to web shops, also gated ones, external marketplaces usage, EDI integrations, customer portals, and all that. So at this first step, getting ready, we find companies that are not yet engaged in digital sales, but they plan to launch a web shop on an e-commerce platform during the next 3 years. At step 2, that's crawl, we find companies that still don't offer digital sales, but they support the purchase process by providing online product catalog or perhaps even the ability to file a quote request. At step 3, that's walk. You are enabling the customers to buy through a professional web shop or e-commerce solution. Digital sales is at this point a complement to other more traditional channels. At step 4, run. E-commerce and a very competent website is going to be an integrated component to your business and sales strategy. And this is supported very much by online marketing as well. And at step 5, being a leader, e-commerce is at the core of the company's business model, and a large majority of all sales was passed through digital channels, and data is of course essential in the continuous development of this type of business model. To take the next step, you need to identify where you are and what type of initiatives that would be suitable for you to progress.
But let's first see what insight we may find in the Litium survey, because we have said that Litium have done a report that you can download on their website. So there is a report that you can download, so you not miss that. And that is what we're getting this information from. So what initiatives are the front runners are doing? The one on the right side, the leaders. One conclusion is that they have done investments and changes over time, and the digital sales channel has become vital for their performance. We also see that that 76% are in the initial 3 phases of the digital maturity ladder. They see digital sales as a complement or to traditional sales, or barely that. We see that leaders are utilizing more marketing channels, 4.8 on the right side, 2.3 on the left side. They're more focused on value, more defined KPIs. Leaders are more data-driven organizations with focus on continuous improvement and development. 90% of the leaders have mapped customer journeys compared to only half of the ones in the early phase on the left side. And by that, more focus on customer experience.
So the companies at the very top there, they have worked for a very long time to reach that position normally. They are very much focused on generating value for both customers, their partners, but also their own staff. And they operate to a large set of different channels and have a high internal concentration of irrelevant skill sets, and much supported by the culture that the senior leadership put in place, and they prioritize their digital presence.
And the bar for entering or climbing the ladder is actually rising. Customer expectations, as we talked about before, as today mean that the website should not just covering the buying process, it must actually master the full customer journey, meaning that must be complement the brand proposition and create awareness, provide inspiration and engagement, offer promotions, and certainly offer standard commerce functionality as easy navigation to find the right products, provide a range of payment and delivery options, and ensure frictionless operations to minimize cart abandonment, but also care for customer retention. And everything has to be driven by data insights and deliver personalized content for each individual at all touch points. To visualize what's expected during an acceleration, this illustration could be helpful. You may not map it one-to-one to the maturity ladder, but it visualizes a change in sales and marketing strategies, moving from being reactive to proactive and predictive. Today automatically drives you to increase your digital maturity. So there is a similarity, but also some difference. So this is a model, as I see it, from a digital sales and self-service perspective. In order to offer the customer better service and information, the first step is purely a reactive information site where you offer product marketing documentation. The second step is when you start to take orders and integrate with an ERP system, for example. The third step, would be when you actively start to sell and focus on lead generation and seamless support across channels. And a fourth step that has increased a lot over the last years is when you start to focus on the customer and treat them differently and offer more self-service capability through customer portals. And the fifth step is when you're involving IoT devices and AI to create intelligent services and become more predictive in your service and sales. So the question is, how do you accelerate your transformation? First, what does digital transformation really mean? To simplify it, it is a type of business development where technology plays an important role. But it's not just about technology. To truly realize value, you need to focus on the whole picture of the business and organization, and not just the technical pieces. It is necessary to carry out business development in a well thought out way in order for digital technology to become its own and deliver value. In practice, this means that you probably need a new way of thinking and perhaps even new ways of working. Transformation is about creating completely new value in order to create a future that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. I think that we have come to a critical point where many new technologies have matured, and at the same time as other factors are creating a tsunami of megatrends, which puts many companies on an unsteady footing. Therefore, it's necessary to decide what you need to do now to remain relevant to your customers.
So let's start to look into how you can shift your position from one point at this ladder to the next. What does the procedure look like? It will depend on where your current position is and what do you already have in place in terms of people, processes, technology, data and content and all that. But it also depends very much on your company's ambition, the company culture, and the leadership mindset. And we find that most B2B companies are already in one form of transformation or another. It's regardless of the level of maturity. And this affects the selection of approach. So if we look at this from left to right, some companies will be in a position where you need to define a new strategy. You feel that you're probably not currently set up strategically in order to approach an increase in maturity. You can also be a company where you know what needs to be done, but you're unsure of how, and you need to set the structure of a roadmap and a series of projects to get there. Some companies will be in a position where most preconditions are in place, but you have a low level of adoption and utilization. You have the solutions in place, but very few are using them. And especially companies towards the top of the maturity ladder are in a position where they need to fine-tune, refine, or optimize the service that they are already offering. So what we will do now is to give you a set of examples of activities that can accelerate your transformation depending on what type of change you're in need of. So we'll go through these different, you see numbers at the bottom in the numbered order, and describe these activities as examples of what you can do.
So I'm in the phase where I need help to create an understanding of where we are on the journey towards our desired state and what we need to do on a strategic level to get there. So suggestion to activity number 1.
Yep, you're in need of a strategy. You need to decide on which direction to head. At this point, technology is not in focus, but the effects that you want to see within your company or towards your customers. You need answers to questions like which customer segment should I approach, on which market, which user category, with which part of my assortment, and all this whilst managing price, competition, business relationship, logistics, and so on. At this point, it's very important to address value first. So you make sure that you select the activity that will generate the most value for you, or it could be for your own organization, it can be for your customers, and it can be for your partners. And the outcome of this type of activity is obviously a strategy. In most cases, one part of that strategy will be a roadmap. It's an illustration of the path forward that everyone can both agree on and get behind. This is a very simple example. In this case, you can see the company is going to be working towards having a full service experience by 2026. Going to be offering a strong customer portal at that point, but it's going to take several years to get there. And this type of roadmap, and it's being, well, agreed on internally, is essential if you don't already have one. So let's say that you do have this strategy and you do have this roadmap already in place, but you need to justify the cost. You need to detail the first steps that you want to take in this roadmap. Perhaps you're even using Litium or planning of using Litium as a platform. There are again activities also in this case, of course, that can support you. You might not have the systems in place yet, and you might not even have the organization in place, but there are things to do. So let's go through those also. I mentioned business case before, and that's definitely needed in order to get your roadmap started. And usually you can get a very good grasp of the costs, and that's the middle part of this equation. You can get quotes from different suppliers and partners. They can tell you that this type of project is going to cost you this much, and that includes looking at resource technology and much more. But what we often see companies falling short is when calculating the value of what this activity will bring. And that can definitely be calculated, and it should. And again, we're going to come back to, you need to decide on what user category to target and the market's assortment and time period as well. And that's towards the right of this picture. Definitely an exercise worth doing. Again, we see that companies don't emphasize the effects strong enough, and therefore it's going to be difficult to create a complete business case. And all this also should take organizational and process gaps into account, and not only the technological changes. So in the detailed project planning, normally for the first step of that roadmap, we here at Columbus, we use a systematic process that we call prepare. It's by which we prepare the start of the project. That includes the creation of a business case, but it also includes detailing the personas and the customer journeys. It will give you a prioritized backlog that goes into development, and it will also provide us with a target technical architecture. But most importantly, it gives us also a UX design. That's a visualization of the end state, the end system, that is very tangible and is often a requirement for everybody to understand what we're aiming for.
So creating a foundation for actually going into a project.
Correct. If you're looking into using Litium, they too have a process for setting up a project. It's called the best practice workshop. You can see here on the screen what it includes. It's a fairly short process that will tackle the most common questions, especially B2B related ones. And we strongly encourage you to do this as well, again, if Litium is on the horizon for you.
Activity 5 and 6. And that is when I need help to continuously grow our business, create value, and adopt new business opportunities. Meaning, for you who already have not only a strategic direction, but also a fair set of suitable systems, people, and processes in place, and would like to create more value from your current state, your current solutions, then I would recommend an activity as doing an audit or review of your current state. This is a really good way to identify new initiatives, build your roadmap, and fill your backlog. And a full audit usually dives into all areas of people, business, and tech. but it can also be limited to a given area where you know you are weak and have pains. So that was number 5. Activity number 6. But just because you have a solution in place, you may not see the expected value from your investment. You need then start to work on creating those growth and that value and create this rise in revenue. You need you do that by having a team that are focusing on your customer journeys from acquisition to conversion and retention. And this is our model for how we visualize our way of working in an evolved phase with leaders. There may be several distinct streams going on the same time, and one is where you maintain and develop your existing solution. That is the blue stream here. You may have new projects running parallel, focusing on your vision, and that is the dotted line. And you have a growth team that continuously tests new ideas based on data and insights, and that is the orange stream. The teams could consist of the same people with some difference. The orange stream, however, works mainly with a clear focus on your effect goals and to create value. And when a successful experiment has been carried out, this is taken into your backlog or to a planned sprint and brings business value to your development. This is how leaders are working. And I need help to transform our business, manage the people, and secure expected value realization when implementing device solution. And this is the last suggestion. We are down to number 7. You also have to choose the right partner and solutions. That could be Litium and Columbus. Together we have delivered to large global B2Bs as well to smaller local companies. So choose a partner that matches your aspiration of growth for the project. Match your geography, have done similar projects before, are agile and flexible in mindset, and that can help you to create this unique customer experience and create value. And that can create success with you over time, because the first project is important, but your long-time relation is more important. When the relation works over time, it's easier to actually climb on the ladder. And also choose solutions that are rich in functionality, that are easy to customize, composable, and they are flexible, that provides fast time to market capabilities and make it possible to grow from there, and also match your aspirations in a good way. And when you're doing this correctly, several studies from McKinsey and Forms, among others, have shown a clear correlation between top performing companies in customer experience during their digital transformation and improved financial performance. On this slide, we see that leaders, companies that focus everything they do towards their customers, has a much higher average growth in revenue compared to all S&P 500 listed companies. And CX laggards, also customer experience laggards, have even lower average growth. So doing it right create values. And that was actually the end statement of this session. Joachim, could you do a short summary?
Sure. We started out describing the current way B2B customers nowadays operate. We then talked about why knowing your organizational digital maturity is highly relevant in order for you to understand what to do next, and what benefits, as we saw here at the end, that increased maturity can bring. And we also talked about different ways, most importantly, to progress your maturity depending on what type of transformation you're in need of.
Then I think we can open up for questions. Over to you, Linda.
Yes, thank you very much for a very good and interesting presentation. We have some question here. The first one is about the ladder. How high should you aim?
I put on my video now, Joachim, so you know that.
Okay.
I hope I am on the video.
Let's do the same.
I would say it depends on ambition, competition, culture, conditions, current state, etc., etc. Because scaling for becoming a leader also shifts over time. If you're aiming for being a leader today, and the bar will rise during that distribution, your transformation. So Joachim and I think we have a little bit different thinking here, but I think that you should aim for being a leader. You have to create that roadmap that are setting you on that stage like 4, 5, 6 years ahead. Because when you're doing that transformation, you will not be there because the technology and everything has been changing so much over those 5, 6 years. So you will be somewhere shorter to actually your goals to be that leader. So it's also about the transformation, changing your roadmap regarding to what's actually happening out there.
I agree to that. That's definitely the scale is shifting all the time. But at the same time, being at the very top and being a leader is going to cost you quite a deal. But at the same time, it's also going to give you quite a lot of value and revenue in return. So yes, I can agree with Dawn. The risk is definitely worth taking if we see it as a risk. But yes, to strive to be a leader. I think that's very important.
Because it's as I said, it's about what kind of market you're on how competitive it is. Because the risk is also that your competition are aiming for being the leader and they're outpacing you. And what is the risk not being there?
Correct.
Okay,
something more?
Yes, we have one here. Which industries are doing well, also ranking higher on the maturity ladder, and which are doing worse, ranking lower? What are the barriers to advising for those who rank worse? Maybe hard to answer, but can try.
A first comment. I could say, like in manufacturing, it's also depending on which part of manufacturing you are into. We have companies, customers that are very top of the ladder or aiming there. They are working very hard to get there, and I would say that they are comparing to a lot of B2B companies in Europe. They are far ahead. But that is in a small sector where they are working. It's a huge business, but it's a small sector. On the other hand, we have other B2B manufacturers that don't need to be in the work in the same pace because their market is not as competitive. That is one take of it.
Could be that way, definitely. And I'd like to add to what you mentioned on the geographical aspect, because definitely there are geographical considerations to take here. We see that different markets like the US, for example, can be at the forefront. We know that many of our Scandinavian markets are at the forefront also when it comes to B2B in general compared to many other markets. But also the business conditions are very different. Again, looking to the US or to France for that matter, it's very heavy on distribution. And that can give you different conditions to operate under. And that can, of course, also affect the maturity that you are able to display on those markets compared to other markets.
And saying that, it's also, if you are on a global scale, for example, or in Europe or in the Nordics, it can also be that certain regions are more important. Let's say if you operate in Europe, maybe like UK, France, Germany, and if you take all the Nordics in one, are more important than some other regions. That could mean that you're aiming for being a leader in those countries, and you are maybe not creating the same kind of setup in the other countries.
Right.
I remember a company called Danone. It's a huge company from France, and they have split up their market presence in, I think it's 6 different on a global scale. So in some countries, they only have are in like the step 1 on the maturity ladder, because they only need like a website and a telephone number. But on the other side and others, they have to be the leaders. So it's depending.
There are sure also businesses and well, that are on average very high on maturity. I'm thinking of financial markets and insurance businesses, for example. They are usually very far ahead. But it was part of that question also relating to the obstacles that we normally see for companies at the bottom of the maturity ladder. In my experience, it oftentimes boils down to the mentality of the senior management and leadership of the organization. If they don't think this is important, it's going to be very difficult also to progress and be good at this. And the funny thing is that all leaders that we talk to, they say, yes, digitalization is very important, but you need to ask the question, how important is it to you? Is it more important than establishing a new sales office on this market? Is it more important to hire an online editor than additional sales staff? It's always going to be this comparison between different types of investments, again, coming back to the value of a business case. So yes, leadership is if I will pinpoint the single thing that is normally the biggest obstacle.
Yes, okay, thank you. And then we have a second question here is, in terms of organization and skill set, should you build your own internal team or use external resources?
I think there will always be a mix. External resources is suitable for one-time efforts like strategy projects or audits, and also in conditions where you have a lot of changes, where you need like resources very fast and etc. Maybe you don't want to hire that kind of things, but also when you want to kickstarting coaching and building your own team and etc. What are you saying, Joachim?
Yes, agree to that. And I'd say that in-house resources, on the other hand, you should strive for the things that you need for your continuous operation. So working with content creation and making sure that you have good data in your business system, report information management, content management, customer relationships, and all that for the continuous parts of your business that you should have your own resources for. Especially, of course, again, coming back to the leadership, make sure that you have a chief digital officer, a chief marketing officer, a chief information officer, but also product owner, system ownership, and all that probably should be internal, especially long term. It can be external interim resources, but long term you should have those internally. Partly it could also be your development team. Actually, we see this in some companies that take this very seriously. They are starting to build up their own skill sets when it comes to also their continuous development of their systems and solutions.
So probably a mix, because there's also this long-term relationship, because you need to like create those kind of new kind of projects to move regarding to vision, and you maybe don't have that with your internal resources. So it's a mix.
Yep.
It's a mix. We have time for one more question here, and this is, can you please clarify the relationship between level of maturity, type of site, and type of activity put in place?
I think that's a question for you.
Yeah, that was definitely part of what we went through here today. So to clarify that, there is a correlation between the maturity you have in your company and the type of site or digital offers that you bring forward. So you remember that we showed that you can have a simple corporate site. That's normally what we can see in less mature companies. So there is a correlation. And for those that have very large online offerings are usually also having a high internal maturity. So that correlation is there. But if you want to progress, regardless of where you're at, you need to look at still, well, perhaps don't continue on this if you wish.
Now, regardless of maturity,
Right.
there is a need of like the strategy, roadmap, growth team, etc., etc. Is that what you're meaning?
Yes,
Joachim, or?
exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
So these activities that we went through, they are relevant regardless how mature you are, to clarify even further.
Okay, thank you very much. The time is now up, and I want to say thank you to you, Dan and Joachim, for sharing all this good info, and thank you for all the participants. And that's all for today.